Drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from today as we share an extraordinary story of what happened when baseball legend Cal Ripken Jr. found himself in an unexpected legal battle over a simple cross necklace. On a crisp Baltimore morning in the spring of 2025, the federal courthouse stood tall against the skyline, its marble columns gleaming in the early light. Inside, amidst the usual bustle of justice being served, something unexpected was about to unfold, a confrontation that would test not just a baseball legend's patience, but his little-known legal expertise. Cal Ripken Jr., known to millions as baseball's Iron Man, for his record-breaking streak of 2,632 consecutive games, had arrived for jury duty like any other citizen. The small gold cross that hung from his neck, a gift from his late father, caught the morning light as he passed through security. Tom Baker, the courthouse security guard and lifelong Orioles fan, noticed it immediately, not because it was flashy, but because he wore one just like it. What happened next would reveal a side of Cal Ripken that few had ever seen, a side that went far beyond his legendary baseball career. It would show that sometimes the greatest victories don't happen on a baseball diamond, but in the quiet corners of everyday life where principles matter more than fame. Judge Margaret Thorne was new to the federal bench, having been appointed just 6 months prior. She had quickly gained a reputation for strict adherence to court rules and procedures, particularly regarding religious symbols in her courtroom. Her interpretation of the separation of church and state had already caused controversy, but no one expected it to collide with one of Baltimore's most beloved figures. The morning began routinely enough. Court Clerk David Mitchell was processing potential jurors, his eyes widening slightly when he saw the name Calvin E. Ripken Jr. on his list. He had grown up watching Cal play, had even been at Camden Yards the night he broke Lou Gehrig's record. But today, Cal was just another citizen doing his civic duty, or so it seemed. Linda Martinez, the court reporter, noticed something different about this particular morning. Judge Thorne seemed more focused than usual on the potential jurors' appearances, her eyes scanning each person who entered with particular attention to any visible religious symbols. When Cal entered the courtroom, he did so with the same quiet dignity that had characterized his baseball career. No fanfare, no special treatment requested or expected. He sat in the jury box alongside teachers, accountants, and shop owners, just another Baltimorean doing his part for the justice system. But Judge Thorne's sharp eyes immediately focused on the small cross hanging from Cal's neck. Her voice cut through the courtroom's quiet murmur like a blade through silk. "Sir, in this courtroom, we maintain strict neutrality regarding religious symbols. You'll need to remove that cross or face a contempt citation." The room fell silent. Bailiff James Cooper, himself a wearer of a similar cross, shifted uncomfortably at his post. He had seen Judge Thorne make similar requests before, but this felt different. This wasn't just any potential juror. This was Cal Ripken Jr., a man known as much for his integrity as his baseball prowess. Cal's response was characteristic of the man who had faced down the greatest pitchers in baseball history without flinching. His voice was calm, respectful, but firm. "Your Honor, I mean no disrespect, but I believe wearing this cross is protected under the First Amendment of the Constitution." Assistant District Attorney Mark Wilson, present for the morning's proceedings, leaned forward in his seat. He had seen many people challenge Judge Thorne's authority before, but never with such quiet confidence. There was something in Cal's demeanor that suggested this wasn't just about a piece of jewelry. Judge Thorne's expression hardened. "Mr. Ripken, your baseball achievements, impressive as they may be, don't grant you special privileges in this courtroom. Remove the cross, or I'll have no choice but to find you in contempt and levy a fine." What happened next would demonstrate why Cal Ripken Jr. was known for more than just his consecutive game streak. With the same methodical approach that had made him one of baseball's greatest students of the game, he began to cite legal precedent. "Your Honor, in Benson v. State, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals specifically addressed the issue of religious symbols worn by jurors. The court held that passive displays of faith, such as crosses, yarmulkes, or hijabs, are protected forms of religious expression that do not interfere with judicial proceedings. The courtroom stirred. David Mitchell exchanged glances with Linda Martinez. This wasn't the Cal Ripken they expected. This was someone who had clearly done his homework, someone who understood not just baseball statistics, but constitutional law. Judge Thorne's face registered surprise, quickly masked by judicial authority. "Mr. Ripken, are you represented by counsel today?" "No, Your Honor," Cal replied, his voice steady. "But I've spent considerable time studying constitutional law, particularly as it pertains to religious freedom. I believe the Supreme Court's decision in Cohen v. California supports my position." Tom Baker, watching from his security post, couldn't help but smile. He had seen Cal Ripken prepare for baseball games with the same thorough attention to detail. Now he was watching him apply that same dedication to defending a principle he believed in. The judge's next words carried a note of warning. "Mr. Ripken, I'm going to fine you $500 for this disruption. If you wish to contest it, you may do so through proper legal channels." Cal's response was immediate, but measured. "I respect your authority, Your Honor, but I must respectfully disagree with both the fine and its basis. The Supreme Court has consistently held that the government cannot impose restrictions on religious expression without showing a compelling state interest. In this case, no such interest has been demonstrated." Linda Martinez's fingers flew across her stenograph, capturing every word of this unexpected legal discourse. She had recorded thousands of court proceedings, but never one quite like this. Assistant District Attorney Wilson found himself nodding unconsciously. In law school, they had studied these very cases Cal was citing. The baseball legend wasn't just throwing around legal terms, he was making a sophisticated constitutional argument. Judge Thorne's courtroom had fallen completely silent, every eye fixed on this unusual confrontation between judicial authority and reasoned resistance. The judge herself seemed caught between her commitment to courthouse rules and the growing realization that she was facing someone who understood the law far better than she had anticipated. "Mr. Ripken," she began, her tone slightly less certain, "are you suggesting that my courtroom rules regarding religious symbols are unconstitutional?" Cal's response was diplomatic but firm. "I'm suggesting, Your Honor, that the Constitution requires any restriction on religious expression to be narrowly tailored to serve a compelling government interest. The mere presence of a small cross necklace doesn't disrupt court proceedings or influence judicial outcomes. In fact, the Supreme Court in Sherbert v. Verner established that incidental displays of religious faith are protected under the First Amendment." David Mitchell watched in amazement as Cal Ripken Jr., the man he had cheered for as a kid, transformed the courtroom into a forum on constitutional rights. This wasn't about celebrity status or special treatment. This was about fundamental principles of American law. The morning had started as a routine jury selection. Now it had become something else entirely, a masterclass in civil rights law from an unexpected source. As the confrontation continued, it became clear that Cal Ripken Jr.'s legendary preparation extended far beyond the baseball diamond. The story of what happened next would soon spread through legal circles and beyond, proving that sometimes the most powerful defense of our rights comes from the most unexpected champions. But for now, in that Baltimore courtroom, a new kind of history was being made, not with a bat and ball, but with knowledge, courage, and unwavering principle. The tension in the Baltimore federal courthouse had reached a fever pitch. What had begun as a routine jury selection had transformed into an unexpected constitutional showdown. Cal Ripken Jr., the man who had never backed down from a challenge in 2,632 consecutive baseball games, was about to demonstrate that his legendary perseverance extended far beyond the diamond. Attorney Sarah Reynolds had been preparing for a different case entirely when she heard the whispers in the courthouse corridor. A baseball legend was giving Judge Thorne a lesson in constitutional law. Intrigued, she slipped into the courtroom just as the confrontation was escalating. Judge Thorne, finding herself in unfamiliar territory, attempted to reassert control. "Mr. Ripken, while your knowledge of constitutional law is impressive, this is my courtroom. The fine stands at $500, and I'm prepared to increase it if you continue this disruption." Cal's response came with the same measured patience that had characterized his entire baseball career. "Your Honor, I'd like to cite Employment Division v. Smith, where the Supreme Court established that while neutral laws of general applicability may burden religious practice, targeted restrictions on religious expression must meet strict scrutiny." Linda Martinez's fingers continued their dance across her stenograph, capturing every word of this extraordinary exchange. In her 15 years as a court reporter, she had never seen anyone challenge Judge Thorne with such precise legal knowledge and unwavering composure. Court clerk David Mitchell noticed something else. The other potential jurors were watching with rapt attention. This wasn't just about a cross necklace anymore. They were witnessing a masterclass in civil rights and constitutional law from a man they had only known for his baseball achievements. Bailiff James Cooper unconsciously touched his own cross, hidden beneath his uniform. He had always respected Cal Ripken for his dedication to baseball, but this was different. This was a man standing up for something larger than himself, armed not with a bat but with knowledge and conviction. Assistant District Attorney Mark Wilson found himself in an unusual position. While he typically supported Judge Thorne's strict courtroom management, his legal training told him that Cal's arguments were sound. The baseball legend was citing precedents that Wilson himself had studied in law school, applying them with surprising precision. "Your Honor," Cal continued, his voice carrying the same quiet authority that had commanded respect in major league clubhouses for 2 decades, "I'd also like to reference the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which requires the government to prove both a compelling interest and that any restriction on religious expression uses the least restrictive means possible." Judge Thorne's expression tightened. She had not expected to face such a well-researched constitutional argument, especially not from a former baseball player. "Mr. Ripken, are you certain you wouldn't like to request counsel? This is becoming quite technical." A small smile crossed Cal's face, reminiscent of his expression after hitting a game-winning home run. "No, Your Honor. Just as I studied pitchers' tendencies throughout my baseball career, I've made it a point to understand our constitutional rights. The First Amendment isn't just words on paper, it's a living guarantee of our fundamental freedoms." Sarah Reynolds, watching from the gallery, was impressed. In her years of constitutional law practice, she had rarely seen such a clear and concise presentation of religious freedom arguments. The baseball legend was methodically building his case, just as he had methodically built his historic playing streak. The judge's next move revealed her growing uncertainty. "Mr. Ripken, while your legal knowledge is noteworthy, there's still the matter of maintaining order and neutrality in this courtroom. The fine stands." Cal's response was immediate but respectful. "Then, Your Honor, I would like to formally object and cite West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, where the Supreme Court held that compelling individuals to violate their religious beliefs requires meeting the highest level of constitutional scrutiny." Tom Baker, from his security post, watched the other potential jurors' reactions. Many were nodding along, some were taking notes. Cal Ripken Jr. wasn't just defending his own right to wear a cross. He was giving them all a lesson in standing up for their constitutional rights. The morning sun had climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows through the courthouse windows. What had started as a simple confrontation over a religious symbol had evolved into something more significant, a demonstration of how knowledge and principle could stand up to authority. Linda Martinez noticed Judge Thorne's demeanor shifting subtly. The judge was known for her strict control of her courtroom, but she was also known for her intellectual honesty. The quality of Cal's legal arguments couldn't be ignored. "Mr. Ripken," Judge Thorne began, her tone notably different, "you've clearly given this matter considerable thought. Would you care to elaborate on why you believe your position aligns with established Supreme Court precedent?" This was the opening Cal had been waiting for. Just as he had approached every at-bat with a strategy, he had prepared for this moment with thorough understanding of the law. "Thank you, Your Honor. The Supreme Court has consistently held that the government must remain neutral toward religion, neither favoring nor discriminating against religious expression. In Lemon v. Kurtzman, the court established a 3-part test for evaluating government actions affecting religion. I believe your order for me to remove this cross fails all 3 parts of that test." David Mitchell watched as several lawyers present in the courtroom began taking notes. Cal Ripken Jr., the Iron Man of baseball, was delivering a constitutional law lecture that could have come from a law school professor. "Furthermore," Cal continued, "in Trinity Lutheran Church v. Comer, the court reaffirmed that laws targeting religious practice must satisfy strict scrutiny. A blanket ban on religious symbols, particularly one that affects jurors rather than court officials, cannot meet that standard. Assistant District Attorney Wilson found himself nodding along. The baseball legend wasn't just throwing around legal terms, he was constructing a sophisticated constitutional argument that any law professor would admire. Sarah Reynolds, still watching from the gallery, recognized something familiar in Cal's approach. Just as he had studied opposing pitchers to become a better hitter, he had clearly studied constitutional law to become a better citizen. This wasn't about avoiding a fine. It was about standing up for fundamental principles. Judge Thorne's next words surprised everyone in the courtroom. "Mr. Ripken, would you say that your position is more aligned with Justice Scalia's majority opinion in Employment Division versus Smith, or with the Religious Freedom Restoration Act's statutory protections?" Cal's response came without hesitation. While Justice Scalia's opinion set an important baseline for religious freedom protections, I believe the Religious Freedom Restoration Act provides a more comprehensive framework for evaluating restrictions on religious expression. Under either standard, however, a categorical ban on passive religious symbols worn by jurors would be difficult to justify constitutionally. The courtroom had fallen completely silent. Even those who had come for other cases were now fully engaged in this unexpected constitutional law seminar. Cal Ripken Jr., it seemed, was as adept at legal analysis as he had been at hitting fastballs. Linda Martinez's fingers flew across her stenograph, capturing every word of what she knew would become a legendary courthouse moment. This wasn't just about a baseball player standing up to authority, this was about the intersection of knowledge, principle, and civil rights. Bailiff James Cooper, still standing at attention, couldn't help but feel proud. As a veteran who had sworn to defend the Constitution, he was witnessing that document being defended not with weapons, but with wisdom and unwavering conviction. The morning had revealed something extraordinary about Cal Ripken Jr., that his legendary preparation and dedication hadn't been limited to baseball. He had applied the same methodical approach to understanding and defending constitutional rights, transforming himself from a sports icon into an unexpected champion of religious freedom. As the confrontation continued, it became clear that this story would spread far beyond the Baltimore courthouse. It would become a testament to the power of knowledge, the importance of standing up for one's principles, and the unexpected ways in which heroes can emerge in the defense of fundamental rights. The Iron Man of baseball was proving that some streaks, like the streak of standing up for what's right, never need to end. And as the morning sun continued to climb, casting its light through the courthouse windows, everyone present understood they were witnessing something remarkable, a legend adding a new chapter to his legacy, not with a bat and ball, but with knowledge, courage, and unwavering principle. As the morning session stretched into early afternoon, the Baltimore Federal Courthouse had become more than just a hall of justice. It had transformed into an impromptu forum on constitutional rights, with an unlikely professor at its center. What happened next would reshape not just one judge's perspective, but the entire courthouse's approach to religious expression. Attorney Sarah Reynolds had seen enough. Rising from her seat in the gallery, she approached the bench. "Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to enter an appearance as amicus curiae in this matter." Judge Thorne, perhaps grateful for the intervention of a familiar legal face, nodded her assent. But before Reynolds could begin her argument, Cal Ripken Jr. demonstrated why he had earned a reputation for grace under pressure during his baseball career. "While I appreciate the offer of assistance, Your Honor, I'd like to continue presenting my own defense, if permitted." Linda Martinez noticed Judge Thorne's subtle nod of approval. The court reporter had transcribed thousands of proceedings, but never one where a sports legend had so eloquently defended constitutional principles. Her fingers remained poised over her stenograph, ready to record what was becoming a historic moment in this courthouse. "Your Honor," Cal continued, his voice carrying the same steady confidence that had characterized his 21 seasons with the Baltimore Orioles, "I'd like to address the practical implications of your courtroom policy. The Supreme Court has consistently held that any restriction on religious expression must be narrowly tailored to serve a compelling government interest." Assistant District Attorney Mark Wilson found himself leaning forward, fascinated by the baseball legend's legal acumen. As a prosecutor, he had argued hundreds of cases, but he had never seen someone without formal legal training construct such a compelling constitutional argument. In Lynch versus Donnelly, Cal proceeded, the Supreme Court emphasized that the Constitution mandates accommodation, not merely tolerance, of all religions. A policy that requires citizens to remove or hide sincere expressions of faith goes beyond the permissible bounds of government regulation. Court clerk David Mitchell watched as several law clerks slipped into the courtroom, word having spread through the courthouse about the unexpected constitutional law seminar being delivered by the Iron Man of baseball. They weren't disappointed. Moreover, Cal continued, reaching up to touch the small cross that had sparked this confrontation, this necklace was a gift from my father. Its significance to me is both religious and deeply personal. The Supreme Court has recognized that such deeply held beliefs deserve the highest level of constitutional protection. Bailiff James Cooper, still standing at his post, felt a surge of emotion. Like Cal's cross, his own hidden beneath his uniform had been a gift from a loved one. This wasn't just about religious freedom anymore, it was about the personal meanings we attach to our expressions of faith. Judge Thorne, who had begun the morning certain of her authority to regulate religious symbols in her courtroom, now found herself grappling with the sophisticated legal arguments being presented. Mr. Ripken, you've clearly given this matter considerable thought. But surely you understand the need for maintaining the appearance of neutrality in a courtroom. Cal's response came with the same measured confidence that had characterized his entire baseball career. Your Honor, I would argue that true neutrality isn't achieved by suppressing all religious expression, but by allowing all sincere expressions of faith that don't disrupt court proceedings. The Supreme Court in Marsh v. Chambers acknowledged that not all religious expression in government settings violates the Establishment Clause. Tom Baker, watching from his security post, couldn't help but smile. He had seen Cal Ripken prepare meticulously for baseball games throughout his career. Now he was watching him apply that same dedication to defending constitutional principles. The atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted dramatically. What had started as a confrontation over a simple cross necklace had evolved into a thoughtful discussion of fundamental constitutional rights. Judge Thorne's initial certainty had been replaced by careful consideration. Mr. Ripken, she began, her tone notably different from earlier in the morning, you've presented a compelling argument regarding the intersection of religious freedom and judicial neutrality. But I'm curious about your thoughts on where we should draw the line. Surely there must be some limits. Cal's response demonstrated why he had been known as much for his intelligence as his athletic ability. Your Honor, I believe the Supreme Court has already provided us with that framework. In Sherbert v. Verner, the court established that any infringement on religious freedom must be justified by a compelling government interest and must use the least restrictive means possible. Sarah Reynolds, still standing nearby, found herself nodding in agreement. As a constitutional law expert, she recognized the sophistication of Cal's legal analysis. This wasn't just about winning an argument, it was about establishing important principles. In this case, Cal continued, a small cross necklace worn by a potential juror poses no threat to judicial neutrality or court proceedings. It's a passive expression of faith, similar to a yarmulke, hijab, or other religious garments that courts have consistently protected. Linda Martinez's fingers flew across her stenograph as Cal built his argument. She had recorded many impassioned legal arguments, but few that combined such deep knowledge with such genuine conviction. The turning point came when Judge Thorne asked a question that went to the heart of the matter. Mr. Ripken, given your status as a public figure, couldn't your wearing of religious symbols be seen as having undue influence on other jurors? Cal's response would be quoted in law schools for years to come. Your Honor, the First Amendment protects everyone's right to religious expression, regardless of their public profile. In fact, the Supreme Court in West Virginia State Board of Education v. Barnett emphasized that constitutional protections are most important when they safeguard the rights of all citizens equally, regardless of their status. The courtroom had fallen completely silent, every person present understanding they were witnessing something extraordinary. This wasn't just about a baseball legend defending his right to wear a cross. It was about the fundamental principles that protect everyone's religious freedom. Assistant District Attorney Wilson, who had been taking notes throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. Your Honor, if I may, the state would like to acknowledge the merit of Mr. Ripken's constitutional arguments. His analysis of the relevant precedents is, well, it's exemplary. Judge Thorne's expression shifted, showing the careful consideration that had made her a respected jurist. Mr. Ripken, you've presented a thoroughly researched and well-reasoned argument. I find myself wondering why you chose to make this stand today. Cal's answer revealed the same character that had made him beloved in Baltimore and beyond. Your Honor, just as I believe in giving my best effort in everything I do, I believe in standing up for fundamental rights, not just for myself, but for everyone who might face similar restrictions. The Constitution isn't just a document, it's a promise we make to each other as Americans. David Mitchell watched as several lawyers in the courtroom began writing furiously, capturing Cal's words. This wasn't just a legal argument anymore, it was becoming a lesson in civic responsibility and constitutional principles. The afternoon light streaming through the courthouse windows had taken on a golden quality, as if nature itself was highlighting the importance of this moment. Judge Thorne's next words would demonstrate why she had earned her position on the federal bench. Mr. Ripken, she began, her voice carrying a new note of respect, you've done more than defend your right to wear a cross today. You've reminded this court of the fundamental principles that guide our legal system. Sometimes it takes someone with your unique perspective to help us see these principles more clearly. The Iron Man of baseball had done something remarkable. He had transformed a confrontation over a cross necklace into a masterclass on constitutional rights, demonstrating that true strength isn't just about physical endurance, but about standing up for what's right with knowledge, dignity, and unwavering conviction. As the afternoon continued, everyone present understood they were witnessing more than just a legal argument. They were seeing a legend add a new dimension to his legacy, proving that preparation, dedication, and principle could triumph in any arena, whether it's a baseball diamond or a federal courthouse. The Baltimore Federal Courthouse had witnessed many historic moments, but none quite like this. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the tall windows, Judge Margaret Thorne prepared to deliver a ruling that would resonate far beyond the confines of her courtroom. Cal Ripken Jr., the man who had revolutionized baseball with his consistency and dedication, was about to help transform the way courts approach religious expression. After careful consideration of Mr. Ripken's arguments, Judge Thorne began, her voice carrying the weight of judicial authority tempered by newfound understanding. This court finds itself compelled to reassess its position on religious symbols in the courtroom. Linda Martinez's fingers hovered over her stenograph, ready to record what she knew would become a frequently cited court ruling. The room held its breath as Judge Thorne continued. Mr. Ripken has demonstrated not only a remarkable understanding of constitutional law but also the importance of protecting sincere religious expression in all settings, including our courts. The fine is hereby vacated, and this court's policy on religious symbols will be reviewed to ensure compliance with First Amendment principles. Court Clerk David Mitchell noticed Cal's subtle nod of appreciation, the same gracious acknowledgement he had given teammates after successful plays during his legendary career. But this victory wasn't about baseball statistics, it was about fundamental rights. Furthermore, Judge Thorne continued, I want to commend Mr. Ripken for the manner in which he presented his case. His combination of legal knowledge, personal conviction, and respectful advocacy serves as a model for how constitutional issues should be argued in our courts. Assistant District Attorney Mark Wilson found himself nodding in agreement. In his years of prosecuting cases, he had rarely seen such a masterful defense of constitutional principles, let alone from someone without formal legal training. Sarah Reynolds, still standing nearby, realized she was witnessing something remarkable. This wasn't just about one man's right to wear a cross. It was about establishing a precedent that would protect religious expression for countless others. The Constitution, Judge Thorne reflected, requires us to balance competing interests carefully. Mr. Ripken has helped this court understand that the mere presence of religious symbols, worn as personal expressions of faith, does not compromise judicial neutrality or court proceedings. Bailiff James Cooper unconsciously touched his own cross beneath his uniform. The ruling wasn't just a victory for Cal Ripken, it was a vindication for everyone who had ever felt forced to hide their faith. Tom Baker, watching from his security post, saw something familiar in Cal's demeanor. It was the same quiet confidence he had shown in game 2131 when he broke Lou Gehrig's consecutive games record. Some achievements transcend sports, reaching into the fundamental principles that shape our society. This case, Judge Thorne continued, reminds us that religious freedom isn't just an abstract concept. It's a living principle that requires constant vigilance and protection. Mr. Ripken's defense of his right to wear a cross has illuminated the broader constitutional principles at stake. The impact of the ruling began to ripple through the courthouse immediately. Law clerks were already discussing its implications for other cases involving religious expression. Court officials were reconsidering their approaches to similar issues. Moving forward, Judge Thorne declared, this court will adopt a more nuanced approach to religious expression, one that recognizes the distinction between government endorsement of religion and protection of individual religious liberty. Cal's response demonstrated the same grace that had characterized his entire presentation. Thank you, Your Honor. As someone who has always believed in the importance of preparation and principle, I'm grateful for the opportunity to help protect these fundamental rights for others. Linda Martinez captured every word, knowing that law students and constitutional scholars would study this transcript for years to come. It wasn't just the ruling that mattered, it was the reasoning behind it, the careful balance of rights and responsibilities. The afternoon light had taken on a golden quality, reminiscent of countless evening games at Camden Yards. But today's victory wasn't measured in runs or hits, it was measured in the protection of constitutional principles. Before we conclude, Judge Thorne added, I want to acknowledge something else. Mr. Ripken has demonstrated that expertise in constitutional law isn't limited to those with law degrees. His thorough understanding of legal precedent and constitutional principles serves as an inspiration for civic engagement. David Mitchell watched as several lawyers in the courtroom began packing up their notebooks, many of them discussing the implications of the ruling. This wasn't just a local courthouse story, it would have ripple effects throughout the judicial system. The court also recognizes, Judge Thorne continued, that this case highlights the importance of challenging authority respectfully when fundamental rights are at stake. Mr. Ripken's approach, combining knowledge, dignity, and unwavering principle, provides a template for civil discourse on constitutional issues. Sarah Reynolds, who had originally risen to offer assistance, found herself grateful that Cal had chosen to present his own defense. His authentic advocacy had added a powerful dimension to the constitutional arguments. The aftermath of the ruling began to spread beyond the courtroom. Courthouse staff were already discussing how the decision would affect their daily operations. Other judges were reconsidering their own policies on religious expression. In closing, Judge Thorne stated, this court wishes to express gratitude to Mr. Ripken not just for his legal arguments, but for reminding us that the Constitution's protections belong to all citizens, regardless of their background or profession. As Cal prepared to leave the courtroom, he paused to shake hands with those nearby. Each gesture carried the same genuine appreciation he had shown fans throughout his baseball career. But today, he had earned admiration not for athletic achievement, but for defending constitutional principles. Tom Baker, still at his post, remembered all the times he had watched Cal break baseball records. Now he had witnessed him help break down barriers to religious expression in the courthouse. Mr. Ripken, Judge Thorne called out as Cal reached the courtroom door, one final thought. Your father would be proud, not just of your standing up for your principles, but of how you did it. You've shown that true strength isn't just about perseverance. It's about using our knowledge and conviction to protect fundamental rights. The impact of the day's events would continue to resonate. Legal journals would analyze the ruling. Law schools would study Cal's arguments. But perhaps most importantly, ordinary citizens would find inspiration in how one man's stand for religious freedom had helped protect everyone's rights. As the afternoon drew to a close, those present understood they had witnessed more than just a legal victory. They had seen how preparation, principle, and unwavering dedication, the same qualities that had made Cal Ripken Jr. a baseball legend, could be applied to defending constitutional rights. The story would be told and retold, not just in Baltimore but in courthouses and law schools across the country. It would serve as a reminder that sometimes the most important victories don't happen on athletic fields, but in the quiet moments when ordinary citizens stand up for extraordinary principles. And for Cal Ripken Jr., the Iron Man of baseball, it was perhaps his most meaningful streak yet, standing up for what's right, defending fundamental freedoms, and proving that true legends aren't defined just by their achievements in sports, but by their commitment to principles that protect everyone's rights. In the end, this wasn't just about a cross necklace or a courthouse rule. It was about the ongoing responsibility we all share to understand and defend our constitutional rights. And thanks to Cal Ripken Jr.'s unexpected legal expertise and unwavering conviction, that lesson would echo far beyond the Baltimore federal courthouse, inspiring others to stand up for their principles with knowledge, dignity, and unwavering resolve. Leave a comment below about a time when you stood up for what you believed in. We'd love to hear your stories of principle and perseverance.